Pushkino is a city in Russia, since April 22, 2019 the administrative center of the Pushkin urban district of the Moscow region. Population, 108,741 people. Distance from Moscow, 14 kilometers from the Moscow Ring Road by rail, 17 kilometers from the Moscow Ring Road along the Yaroslavskoye Highway, 30 km from the center of Moscow, Red Square. The railway line, the rivers Ucha and Serebryanka, as peculiar sides, form here a solid green triangle, inside which the administrative and business center, various organizations. The first documentary mention of the village of Pushkino dates back to 1499, the scribe book of Prince V. I. Golinin for the metropolitan village of Pushkino in the Moscow district. One of the villages, Sakarnikov, had 6 courtyards, 2 more each had 4 courtyards, and the rest were small one-courtyard farms. In the first quarter of the 16th century, 7 more villages and 1 initiative arose. Expressing his support for Metropolitan Simon, the inhabitants of Pushkino were no longer obliged to give food to the Moscow governors and volostels, which, starting from the charter of 1488, was ordered to be done with all plows, princes, boyars, monastic and black. The trial of local residents also passed into the competence of the metropolitan, except especially serious cases, such as murder and robbery. By the middle of the century, a Babel settlement of 29 households was formed here. In 1571, the village fell into desolation in connection with the raid of the Crimean Khan Devlet. At the beginning of the 17th century, the village of Pushkino, located along the Old Trinity Road, witnessed many events of the time of troubles: the funeral procession of Boris Godunov, the retreat of the Russian army after the Battle of Rachmaninovo, September 1608, the movement of the troops of Mikhail Skopin-Shuisky in 1610 and the campaign of the 2nd Militia under the leadership of Dmitry Pozersky from Yaroslavl to Moscow. In 1613, a procession of Mikhail Romanov followed through Pushkino, heading for Moscow for the coronation. At the beginning of the 1690s, a dam on a pond, near the mill, on the construction of which a carpenter's artel from the Patriarchal Berezkovskaya Sloboda in Moscow, house pond peasants, as well as farm workers worked. In the village of Pushkino, the stone St. Nicholas Church was built and consecrated. At the same time, new mansions were built on the Patriarchal house courtyard. In 1699, the village of Pushkino was included in the Company system to serve the duty of building ships. The ships themselves were not built here, but a tax was collected for their construction since 1750. The Serebryanka Pond Mill on the Yamat/Yamanets River, later Serebryanka, was in the quit-rent ownership of the Moscow merchant Gerasim Andreev, and since 1756, the peasant Prokopy Mikhailov, who produced the leafy craft at the mill. In 1759, a Moscow merchant Mikhail Artemyev began to use a new method at the mill to cut out sheets of shaded art on polished red and green copper sheets for embossing various sacred images on silk fabrics and on paper. Plague epidemic 1770 to 1772 years, which came to Moscow from the northern Black Sea region from the fronts of the Russian-Turkish War, had disastrous consequences for the village of Pushkino and its environs. The peak of the epidemic fell in the period from July to November 1771. It was in this year that one artisan from Pushkino brought an infection from the Rogozhskaya Yamskaya Sloboda in Moscow to the village, acquiring a kokoshnik there for his wife, which later turned out to belong to a woman who died from the plague. As a result, the village died out completely. After that, it was settled again. In 1812 the village of Pushkino was burned down, and the nearby landowners' estates were ravaged by soldiers of the Napoleonic army. In the 1830s, the factory of Ivan Vandergyucht and August Pretra operated in Pushkino, as well as a wool weaving factory and a dyeing and printing factory of Karl Filipovich Favar functioned here in the 1840s. In 1862, railway traffic from Moscow to Sergeyevsky Posad was opened. The station was wooden in 1883, the stone building of the station was designed. The launch of railway transport led to a dacha boom. The first dachas at the Pushkino station began to appear in 1866. As the forest city grew, it became necessary to build a new church. Before its appearance, summer residents used the Nikolskaya church in the village of Pushkino. In 1874, on the initiative of A. I. Klyucharyov, a wooden Bogolyubskaya church was built on the western side. In 1880, a public park was laid out near the station. The summer theater, built in the same year, in the center of the park, burned down in 1894, became the center of the cultural life of the dacha village. In 1896, at the expense of the insurance company Yaker, a new summer theater was built in the park, which burned down in the summer of 1993. In 1890, at the expense of EI and the village in 1914, the construction commission of the Bogolyubskaya church at Pushkino station, chaired by Konstantin Petrovich Bakrushin and designed by Karl Karlovich Gypius, completed the construction of the stone church of the Descent of the Holy Spirit, located near the two previous wooden churches. In 1915 to 1916, the architect V.I. Motylev, according to the project of the artist and architect S.I. Vashkov, built the Church of the Savior image not made by hands in Klyazma. In 1914, a postal and telegraph office was located in the village of Pushkino. The post office in Pushkino was initiated back in 1884, and the telegraph office was opened in 1891. The postal address at the Pushkino station in 1914 had several enterprises: a brick factory, a wool spinning factory, a wool spinning mill, a weaving and the finishing factory, the dyeing and finishing factory of the Vatrim Partnership, the finishing factory of Kopylov and Ankudanov at the village of Nemchinov. In the village of Pushkino there was a mechanical weaving and dyeing and finishing factory E. Armand, founded in 1860. In 1914 in the village of Pushkino there was a pharmacy Andreevskaya hospital. At the Armand factory at the Pushkino station there was a shelter of the Imperial Philanthropic Society for Recovering Children on the western side of the dacha area, in the forest near the Serebryanka River. In the summer months there was an orphanage for girls orphans and a summer colony for sisters and pupils. In 1914, Pushkino also had several primary educational institutions of different departments: Pushkin I and Pushkin II primary Zemstvo schools, primary Pushkin Parish School. On August 17, 1925, Pushkino receives the status of a city. It included a dacha settlement near the station and part of the village of Pushkino. On June 12, 1929, the city of Pushkino became a regional center. The district included two workers' settlements, Ivantivka and Krasnoarmeysk, the dacha settlement Mamontovka, Sofrinskaya, Pudilovskaya, Pushkinskaya Volosts, several villages of Shchelkovskaya and Kotkovskaya Volosts. In the same year, the first electric train passed from Moscow to Pushkino. A year later, the electric trains went to the station Pravda. In 1930, Pushkino was considered one of the best summer cottages. From the railway station to the village, a bus went to the Pushkin factory, and a post office, a telegraph office, a telephone exchange and a legal consultation office were located on Pushkinskoye Highway, now Moskovsky Prospect. In 1953, the city of Pushkino was assigned to the category of cities of regional subordination. Rapid construction began, Moskovsky Prospect was built up, the Serebryanka microdistrict was built. In the 1970s, the Dzerzhinets microdistrict. At the turn of the 1970s and 1980s, the Armand microdistrict appeared, where 9-story buildings replaced many wooden houses in the village of Pushkino. Currently, the city is experiencing the so-called point building. In 2002, the villages of Veterinary Hospital and Venielm were incorporated into the city. In 2003, the suburban settlements of Zavty Ilyich, Klyazma, and Mamontovka, the villages of Mispro Enite, the Sanatorium Forest School and the Sanatorium Cardiologic, the villages of Zvyagino, Novaya Derevna, and Pushkino were included in the city of Pushkino. 2005 to 2019 the city formed the municipality of the urban settlement of Pushkino as the only settlement in its composition, with an area of 60.33 kilometers. Since 2019, the city has become the center of a single municipal formation Pushkin urban district within the boundaries of the former municipal district. On the territory of the urban settlement there are higher educational institutions. Institute of Tourism Technology. Onacha VPO Modern Humanitarian Academy, PF, 105. Secondary Specialized Educational Institutions. College FBA VPO RGUTIS. GAOUSPO 2nd Moscow Regional. Pushkin Lyceum of Economics, Politics, and Law. Vocational School No. 54. Schools and Gymnasiums, No. 1 to 10. Boarding School Type 8. Evening School. Pushkino, the Center for Forest Science of Russia, is essentially the forest capital of Russia. On the territory of the city there are Central Base of Aviation Forest Protection, FBUAVL Sakhrana. All-Russian Research Institute of Forestry and Forestry Mechanization. Institute for Advanced Training of Forestry. Central Research Laboratory of Forestry Engineering. Central Experimental Design Bureau of Forestry Engineering. In addition, Pushkino is located GUCH Central Forest Seed Station. Russian Center for Forest Protection, FBU Roslezizhkita. Sports Palace Pushkino. O Water Sports Base Serebryanka. OMBUFGC Pushkino Physical Culture and Sports Complex with an open stadium. OMBU Palace of Sports Pushkino. The largest industrial enterprises and organizations operating on the territory of an urban settlement are Pushkin Bakery Plant. Flour Production. OPEMZ LLC, Pushkin Electromechanical Plant. OMTPA Delphin Group, Production of Technical Oils and Special Fluids. Avtodorstrojstvo and Reconstruction of Highways. MOCOM, Logistics Company. Avantage Stroy Construction Company. Qualitex, Production of Home Textiles, Bedspreads, Blankets, Pillows, Mattress Covers. Itron, Production of Rolled Lawn. Nico Production of Translucent Structures made of PVC and aluminum, Blinds. Novaroll Production of Stretch Films, Adhesive Tapes, Bags. Pushkin Meat Yard. Chilled Meat Production, Slaughtering of Livestock. Pushkin Textile Woolen and Half-Woolen Fabrics, Suits, Departmental Fabrics, Jacquard Coats, Shoes, Furniture, Blankets, and Bedding, as well as fabrics for covers in the car interior. Almida. Manufacture of footwear. The symbol of the city is the railway water tower standing on the station square, built in 1903, presumably according to the project of L.N. The exposition of the museum presents an archaeological collection of the 12th to 13th centuries, a collection of personal belongings of the Armand family of industrialists, items of dacha and estate life, a memorial room of the artist E.I. Kamzalkin, paintings, graphics, sketches of scenery, photographs. The oldest building in the city is the five-domed church with a bell tower and two borders, the Church of St. Nicholas the Wonder Worker in the village of Pushkino, built with the blessing of Patriarch Adrian in 1692. The village of Pushkino belonged to the church for a long time. The building has survived to our time with major reconstructions. The characteristic window frames in the patterned style have been preserved. The floors of 1912 in the Art Nouveau style are interesting. The poet Vladimir Mayakovsky lived in Pushkino during the summer seasons of 1920 to 1928. Became a textbook poem An Unusual Adventure, where instead of an epigraph, the exact address of the poet's residence, Pushkino. Akulova Gora, Rumyantsev's dacha, 27 miles along the Yaroslavl Railway in 1969, the Poets' Library Museum was opened on Akulovaya Gora. In 1991, the first fire broke out, destroying the veranda and memorial room. On the night of July 18 to 19, 1993, in the centenary of the poet's birth, as a result of arson, not a trace of the dacha remained, only a clearing among old lime trees. And only the monument to V.V. Mayakovsky, sculptors, N.A. Selivanov and V.N. Selivanov, on the top of Akulovaya mountain reminded of the past years. The artist Yevgeny Ivanovich Kamzalkin, 1885 to 1957, lived on Pisarevskaya Street, created in 1918 the emblem hammer and sickle, which later became a world-famous emblem. In 1922, the Mosovet allocated a dacha on Lentovka Street, Mamontovka microdistrict, to Demian Bedny for life. The poet lived in a wooden mansion with his family in the summer from 1922 to 1944. In the former vacant lot, he grew a large orchard. Konstantin Postovsky arrived in Pushkino in 1923. At first, he settled on Turgenevskaya Street opposite the city park, then moved to the wing of the former Strukov estate, first Serebryanskaya Street. Mikhail Prishvin rented a dacha, a small wooden house in the pine-covered Dobrolyubovsky Passage, in 1944 to 1946. In the Novaya Durovna microdistrict, in the Sretanskaya Church, there was a parish of the Orthodox archpriest Alexander Men, 1935 to 1990. The cameraman Vadim Yusov lived in Pushkino on Pisarevskaya Street from 1942 to the end of the 50s. Revolutionary Inasat Armand, in whose honor the city's microdistrict was named, also lived in Pushkino. Inasat, being married to the merchant A.E. Armand, worked for a long time as a teacher in a peasant school in the village of Eldagino, until she came to the idea of the World Revolution and joined the RSDLP, B. In Pushkino, the famous Soviet puppeteer Margarita Dims and her husband, the poet Nikolai Shatrov, lived in a dacha. The program used archival materials of the Pushkino-Siti TV company. The translation was done in a freestyle with the help of a kind man and an internet translator. Soundtrack company is My World.